have been favored by God to have you in our lives. To all of the honorees of this evening, to the dignitaries who are sharing this time with us, and to all of you, my friends, I greet you this evening. The program said that I am the speaker. In full transparency, I am a Black Baptist preacher standing in a Black Baptist church in the pulpit. But I'm not going to preach. I'm going to do what the program says, and I'm going to speak. And so, if my daughter Zoe was here, she would say loud amen. She says on Sunday mornings, I'm too long. I'm not going to be long tonight. I'm going to be about 7 minutes. One, I thought I was coming to a banquet, and I thought there would be food. And somebody said me too. And two, I got to be at work in the morning. So I won't hold you long, but I'm grateful to be here tonight. Again, my salutations and congratulations to all of the honorees of the evening. Melissa Harris Perry is a brilliant scholar, author, and is a professor at Wake Forest University. Her specialty is in the area of international politics and media. She's written a fascinating book entitled Sister Citizen: Shame, Stereotypes of Black Women in America. I find the book to be incredibly interesting, particularly in the second chapter of that work, where she leans on the work of cognitive psychology in order to dramatize and to articulate the plight of Black women in the United States of America. She calls upon this research, this experiment, where individuals were seated in crooked chairs in a crooked room, and then tasked to find which way was up and align themselves accordingly. Perry writes that there were some individuals who would look at the images on the wall, and they would find some symmetry with those images on the wall, and they would ring the bell and say, indeed, they had found which way was up. The only problem was that if the images on the wall were crooked as well, you could never really achieve a truly upright posture. Interestingly enough, there were some people, in spite of the crooked images on the walls, in spite of the crooked chair that they were seated in spite of the crooked room in which they were positioned, they found a way to figure out which way was up and to stand, therefore, accordingly. You know, my brothers and sisters, the reality is that we live in a crooked world. All you got to do is look at the realm of national politics, and you will see that the front runner of the 2024 presidential election is an individual that has dozens of charges, yet that individual is running again for the presidency of the United States of America. And would you believe that there are people who are lining up in order to support him? Now, you all know that if a black man led an insurrection on January the 6th and began to take over the United States Capitol, everybody would have been in prison. But because we live in such a crooked world, what's good for white and wealthy people is not good for if you're black and in the ghetto. We live in a crooked world. Right here in the state of Kentucky, did you know that our legislators right here this very week were busy filing legislation that was to the detriment of diversity, equity, and inclusion? They are filing legislation against diversity, equity, and inclusion, because you do understand that inclusion for some people is a threat to some other people. As long as they are including and making all of the decisions, it's fine. But as soon as you begin to open the doors and the floodgates for other people, it becomes a problem. I tell you today, we live in a crooked world right here in the West End of Louisville. We find the West End to be a food desert. We find the West End to be an area of this community that continues to be dogged by redlining. We find this to be an area that continues to be an area that is polluted, that suffers under the weight of of environmental injustice. And just this week there was legislation filed in Frankfurt that would roll back protections for people right here in the West End. We live in a crooked world. But even though we live in a crooked world, we don't serve a crooked God. In fact, I can hear my grandmother saying that our God sits high, yet he looks down low. That he is a God that has a way of evening out the scales of our existence and giving us the victory anyways. In fact, that's why we're here tonight. We're here because even though we've lived in a crooked world, God has always sent somebody to help us to find which way was up. God always has somebody who will remind us who we are when the images that are around us are crooked. God always has somebody who will lead us toward a destination that is a more perfect union. God always has a Nanny Helen Burroughs who will organize women in the National Baptist Convention. God always has an Ida B. Wells who will educate. God always has a Fannie Lou Hamer who will fight for the rights of Mississippians to vote. God always has a Nelson Mandela who will stand up for the rights of people who have been pressed down. God always has a Malcolm X who will be able to encourage and charge the people who have been kissed by nature's son. God always has a Martin Luther King who will march and write and protest until the laws of this nation are changed. God always has a Barack Obama who will start a grassroots campaign and will take that grassroots campaign all the way to the White House. God always has a Kamala Harris who knows how to do what she's doing and make her impact right where she is. God always has somebody who helps us to survive, even in a crooked world. The reality, my brothers and sisters, is that even though we live in a crooked world, God gives us everything that we need in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to stand tall, even in the face of that which is crooked. What we must do is continue to do what we've always done. I have a problem with the statement, I am not my ancestors. That's a statement, that's a quote that is emanated from my generation. I'm a millennial. And we millennials, we really believe that we're smart, and we are smart. We millennials really feel like we have it going on, and we do have it going on. Do you know that millennials, we are the first digital generation? Millennials, we account for some of the most creative thinkers that the world has ever seen. But it may be that sometimes we get a little bit
come on.
so about saying. Sometimes we think too highly of where we are in the world. Sometimes we have forgotten that everything we have, God gave us, and everything we know, God taught us. And where we are, the Lord has brought us. And we will tend to make some statements that really don't take into full account for everything that has come before. We will say sometimes, misguided, that we are not our ancestors. But can I tell you, our ancestors were some of the strongest people that have ever walked the face of the planet. Our ancestors were the strongest people that have ever been blessed to walk this side. And our ancestors taught us this, that if we can stand together, and if we can fight together, and if we can envision together, then we can change the world, and we can create a world that is better than the one we inherited. And how do we do this? Well, we have to stick together in this crooked world. We must stick together in this crooked world. We must stick together in this crooked world. Yes, I learned that lesson. Just a few months ago. Some of you may have heard, I'm a newlywed. And my wife and I were traveling. And at this particular vacation destination, they told us that we could see the dolphins if we just got in these little boats, kayaks they call them. We would take these paddles and begin to paddle. And so she and I checked to make sure that our insurance policies were up. And we got strapped on those vests, got in those kayaks, and began to roll out to where they told us those dolphins were. You know, we stayed out there. Minutes turned an hour turned to 2 hours. Sun began to set. We never saw those dolphins. We had paid all the money by then, you know, that it wasn't free to get in the kayak. We had to pay to get in the kayak, and we paid all that money. Only to roll out to the midst of that body of water. And we didn't see those dolphins. Finally, we both were hungry, and we said, we're tired. There ain't no dolphins out here. We saw some other little sea creatures, but no dolphins. So we decided that we were going to go on and row back to shore. Funny thing happened as we were rowing. And please don't tell my lovely new bride that I said this. Her arms got tired. And she just began to row any kind of way. And it don't work when I'm rowing this way. She's rowing that way. It didn't quite work out real well. And then, you know, she got so fed up that she just put her roll back, folded her arms, and said, you do it. But the problem was, there were two people in the kayak. The kayak can't go as far as fast if one person is sitting and one person is rowing. The only way we could get back to shore is if we rowed at the same time, in the same way, at the same side, so that we could get to the same destination. Can I tell y'all what we ought to do, black people and white people, millennials and boomers? What we ought to do is start rowing on the same side, start rowing in the same direction, start rowing with the same rhythm, and watch God bless us. Keep rowing and watch God give